With so many different styles, techniques, and methods, it can be hard to know what route to take when starting or rerouting a home garden or homestead. But in this video, I am going to talk you through two of the most popular and mysterious approaches to gardening out there: permaculture and Korean natural farming. These also happen to both be approaches that prioritize high levels of productivity and abundance. But with both as great options to pursue, there are drawbacks and limitations to each approach. And one size does not fit all. So by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what each of these gardening styles are, their goals and strategies, and which one is going to best fit your needs. And spoiler alert, you may not have to choose only one. But before we get to that, welcome back to the channel. I'm Taylor. I've built a number of gardens from scratch based on the principles that I've found in both permaculture and natural farming. And ultimately, I love helping people find solutions to their gardening problems that lead to sustainability rather than constantly buying in cheap fixes for garden problems. One of the most incredible ways that I have found to bring sustainability to the garden is by culturing indigenous microorganisms found in nature. I'm going to talk a lot about this later on, but if you want our free ebook, A Beginner's Guide to Indigenous Microorganisms, we'll leave the link in the description and you can check that out. Our gift to you. So let's start to break these down. Permaculture and Korean natural farming. Starting with permaculture. Permaculture was first developed by a man named Bill Mollison and his student David Holmgren in the 1970s. Permaculture is short for the words permanent agriculture, and this philosophy arose as a critique of industrial ag. While industrial agriculture excels at producing a huge amount of food quickly and efficiently, the costs are great. Worse yet, these costs are repeatedly ignored and left for the next generation of farmers to deal with. Soil is depleted of nutrients and microbes, nature is not respected, and very little attempt is made to restore what is lost through the process of stripping the land bare. So permaculture, as a response, roots itself in observation. The idea that Bill Mollison had is that by observing natural ecosystems and traditional farming systems, especially those found in indigenous cultures, we could design agricultural systems that bring patterns of resilience and abundance. At its core, permaculture is a system of design that seeks ethically sound practices. It serves as a roadmap for the decisions that you make as you explore building or refurbishing a garden. We'll get into what this looks like practically a little later. Korean natural farming also arose in response to conventional agricultural practices and was also developed in the mid-late 20th century by a man named Cho Han-kyu, oftentimes referred to as Master Cho. Whereas Bill Mollison responded to unsustainable farming practices with design solutions, Master Cho rejected modern agriculture's obsession with chemical-intensive farming and turned to microbiology and fermentation. The result came in the form of a very specific set of agricultural inputs with an emphasis on robust biology and respect of plants' natural growth rhythms and cycles. With those summaries in place, we can start to talk through the core tenets and principles of each approach. Starting with permaculture. The three ethics of permaculture are earth care, people care, and fair share. Earth care means that we seek to rebuild soil, we protect water resources, and we seek to regenerate ecosystems through our practices. This also means that we cut out things that degrade soil, deplete water, and degenerate ecosystems. Things like pesticides and herbicides, chronic tillage, harsh chemicals, reliance on gas-powered machines, all of that we avoid in permaculture at all costs. The second ethic, people care, means that the systems that we design for the health, safety, and the community of the people involved. Finally, the ethic of fair share means that in permaculture, we limit consumption and we emphasize redistributing the unused crops and resources to people in the community, to plants, to animals, and to the environment in general. Now, beyond the three ethics of permaculture, there are 12 principles developed by David Holmgren, each of which is both philosophical and practical. We won't spend forever going through each, but it's important that you have a rough idea of what we're looking at here. The first principle is to observe and interact. The basic action step here is to slow down and watch. This means that you take the time to walk through your garden or full property to get a better understanding of what is already happening. Simply sitting in a single place for a few minutes or longer can reveal to you what you wouldn't have otherwise seen. In slowing down, you might see the way that native insects interact with each other. What predators and pests are living in your yard? Where do the trees cast their shadows? Where does water pool? The slope, general terrain within the space. If you could take one thing away from permaculture, this just might be it. Just being patient enough to observe your environment and starting to see yourself as a participant in the natural processes already at work will make you a more humble and more effective gardener. Principle 2 is catch and store energy. This means that we save resources when they're abundant. For example, rainwater gets harvested in rain barrels. Solar panels are used to convert sunlight into electricity, etc. Principle 3 is obtain a yield. One of the surprisingly hardest aspects of gardening can actually be just growing plants all the way to harvest and then harvesting them. Every system within the permaculture garden should produce something useful. That could be food, but it could also be firewood, animal fodder, compost material, or green manure. On the flip side, we want to avoid growing plants with single uses or that don't do much other than consume resources, like lawns. Instead, we grow plants that serve a multitude of functions and even interact with one another to support the system. Principle number 4 is apply self-regulation and accept feedback. The feedback that you receive could be from a well-meaning but nosy neighbor, but more importantly, you need to let your system tell you what is working. Rather than just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change, we look for ways that we can address the problems. If one area of your growing space lies in a high traffic area, the soil will likely become compacted. A solution might be to think of ways that you could redesign the flow of foot traffic so that the garden bed doesn't get stepped on so much. This also might mean that you spend time tracking pest outbreaks or yield drop-offs and then adjusting your plans. Principle 5 is that we use and value renewable resources and services. Instead of driving to the store to buy synthetic fertilizer, then driving back, spreading the fertilizer, and tilling it in, we might consider what alternative approaches could accomplish the same goals with less resources. For instance, allowing your chickens to graze the plot of land will help get rid of the weeds, gently till the upper layers of the soil, and gradually fertilize the soil naturally through their manure. This is one of many ways that we might think about prioritizing renewable resources and services. Principle 6 is that we produce no waste. This principle requires you to change your definition of what the word waste is. And the reality is we often simultaneously throw away and buy in far more than is necessary. Then rather than tossing kitchen scraps in the garbage, we ask ourselves, could this go in the worm bin or the bokashi bin? And bokashi, if you're unfamiliar, is a way of pre-composting food scraps, including meat and dairy and bones that would otherwise be incapable of composting in their raw form. Another example is repurposing old building materials to build out houses or other infrastructure in the garden or on the farm that doesn't need to look brand new. We're looking to build closed-loop systems. On to Principle 7. In permaculture, we design from patterns to details. This means that we zoom out before zooming in. For example, we utilize the natural contours of the landscape and implement swales. We design food forest systems before deciding individual crops. We perform a sector analysis. What is the sun exposure? Where's the wind coming from? What access to water is there? Before laying out all of our garden beds. All of these broad picture things are the 1,000-foot view lens that we look through before diving to the ground level. Principle 8 is integrate rather than segregate. This means that we combine elements so that they can support each other. An example might be that rather than planting an orchard separate from your ornamental shrubs and pollinator attracting plants, we combine these elements strategically so that every plant benefits from each other's presence. So a fruit tree might produce helpful shade for the tender herbs growing beneath it, while a comfrey plant grows underneath the canopy, drawing up nutrients from the soil and storing it in its leaves that can be chopped and dropped around the base of the tree, encouraging healthy microbes to feed on the leaves and deliver those nutrients to the tree's roots. Principle 9 is use small and slow solutions. So start manageable and grow with experience. This is one of the hardest things for young gardeners to do, and still is for me. Rather than starting with an entire field of crops, if you're starting for the first time, a single raised bed will probably be more than enough for you to manage responsibly. Scale down your expectations and plan according to your skill level and your knowledge. Principle 10 is that we use and value diversity. Permaculture holds the general belief that biodiversity creates resilience. This brings us back to things like interplanting from Principle 8, but it builds on it and it requires us to consider ways that we can bring overall above ground diversity to our entire micro ecosystem. Opt for more types of plants and less of each in order to build resilience into your growing. A single disease or pest can take out an entire farm in a single season if only one crop is being grown, but it's almost impossible for that to happen with a diversity of crops being present. Principle 11 is use edges and value the marginal. The principle of edges is one of the most fascinating and unassuming principles in permaculture to me, because it's a principle that you can immediately see nearly everywhere. Pond edges, fence lines, shade, sun borders, these are where plants are virtually guaranteed to congregate. If you can strategically plant into these edges along paths, fence lines, and borders, you can tap into some of the most powerful and productive growing spaces in your garden. Finally, principle 12 is creatively use and respond to change. Don't fight change, design for it. This is kind of related to principle 4, which is apply self-regulation and accept feedback. Creatively using and responding to change means that we build in and design for adaptability. An annual-based growing strategy can be highly productive in the short term, but if we look for long-term sustainability, we can slowly build perennial-focused growing systems that require less and less maintenance through the years. Perennial-focused systems help build in resilience by requiring little water after the first years after getting established. And soil often only improves with less and less work in these areas because they're designed to recycle nutrients. So there's the overview of the 12 permaculture principles to give you an idea of some of the ways that you might adjust your thinking about your garden. And we'll get into even more practical applications toward the end of the video. But first, let's take a look at Korean natural farming. KNF is a system of regenerative agriculture that uses fermented, microbe-rich inputs to build soil health, grow nutrient-dense crops, and restore natural fertility without relying on synthetic chemicals. The goal is to work with your local biology, making your own inputs and feeding the soil life so that it can feed your plants. Some of the core tenets of KNF are that indigenous microorganisms, or IMOs, are the foundation. Healthy soil is alive and the microbes in your area are adapted to your climate and your ecosystem. So in KNF, we collect, culture, and apply those local microbes to restore degraded land or supercharge plant growth. Another tenet is that inputs should be natural, local, and homemade. A lot of the vision of KNF is that as gardeners and farmers, we're reclaiming our responsibility to make inputs and amendments from things like local weeds and wild plants, food scraps, and other ingredients. In KNF, it is also crucial to understand that we aren't seeking to feed only the plant that we're trying to grow, but instead we're recognizing the miraculous invisible processes that are occurring beneath the top layers of the soil in the form of the soil-food web interactions. We restore natural balance to the soil primarily by feeding beneficial bacteria and fungi. This creates long-term fertility rather than just short-term plant growth, which is what happens when you apply synthetic fertilizers year after year. Finally, in KNF, there is a huge focus to observing and responding to plant growth stages. We'll have future videos on the nitty-gritty of these processes and what it is that you can specifically do. So be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet so that you don't miss those videos. But in essence, there are 4 stages of plant growth that KNFers acknowledge and apply inputs to in accordance with. We've got the vegetative growth stage, flowering, fruiting, and dormancy. I've referenced the natural inputs that we utilize in KNF several times, so we'll go through what those are And that said, we will have a video coming out soon detailing each of these in greater depth, depending on when you're watching this. So for this video's purpose, we'll keep it to a broad overview. There are 9 core inputs in Korean natural farming, and these are both modular and highly scalable, meaning that you can make one or a few of these or all of them and use it to great effect. And you can also fairly easily scale the creation of these inputs to match the size of your growing space. The first and unarguably most important input in the KNF core is Indigenous Microorganisms, or IMO. This is a 4-stage process of capturing native microbes found in a local forest, preserving them in brown sugar, diversifying them on a high carbon substrate, integrating them into your native garden or farm soil microbes, and then applying those microbes to your growing soil. Because microbes play the most crucial role in unlocking and delivering nutrients, also in defending plants from pathogens and helping the plants perform just about every function, getting these highly effective microbes on board is a game changer to the garden. It kind of makes everything just run more smoothly. We've got several videos on this topic that you can check out, plus our free ebook that I mentioned at the beginning of this video that you can download. We've got the link in the description for that, or you can just learn about this process from our other videos. Now, beyond IMO, we have 8 traditional inputs that serve unique functions, and many of which can only be made by you or by someone in your area, since the local microbes are key to many of these working. Fermented plant juice and fermented fruit juice, also called FPJ and FFJ, are 2 examples of this. These are liquid amendments made from fast-growing local plants like mugwort, comfrey, or bamboo shoots. Take some of these vigorous plant debris, chop it up, and mix it with brown sugar, ferment it for a week, and strain it out, leaving you with a concentrated, enzyme-rich foliar spray. Fermented plant juice is used foliarly on plants during their vegetative stages of growth, and fermented fruit juice is used for flowering and fruiting stages. Another KNF input is lactic acid bacteria serum, or LABs, or labs. This is a wild bacteria-dominated spray made from cultured rice wash, water, and milk. It's also used for breaking down nutrients into bioavailable compounds for plants to uptake, protecting plants from pathogenic bacteria, controlling odors, and overall health in livestock. Fermented fish amino acid, or FAA, is like FPJ but made with fish waste scraps and fermented for a much longer amount of time. On the low end, we've got 3 months and as many as 12 months. FAA serves as an intense nitrogen boost, and it's used alongside FPJ in the vegetative growth stages of a plant to help it produce leaves and strong growth. The 5th input is OHN, or Oriental Herbal Nutrient, which is a mix of 5 antimicrobial immune-boosting herbs: garlic, ginger, cinnamon, licorice, and angelica, all fermented and then extracted via a high alcohol content spirit over a 3-month period. OHN takes a while to make, but it is a crucially helpful input for establishing pest and disease resistance, as well as immune stimulation in a plant. In the 6th and 7th slot, we've got water-soluble calcium acetate and water-soluble calcium phosphate, 2 very similarly derived but distinct ingredients used for strengthening plant structure and for applying at fruiting and flowering stages of a plant's life cycle to aid with formation of fruits and flowers. If you struggle from ailments like blossom end rot, this can be a huge help. These are made by charring eggshells or animal bones, depending on which one you're making, and then soaking them in brown rice or apple cider vinegar for several weeks. This process leaves you with a mineral-rich extract that is heavily diluted. Input number 8 is raw brown rice vinegar, which is a traditional vinegar used in KNF and in Korean cuisine. Brown rice vinegar, or BRV, is rich in organic acids, trace minerals, and enzymes. It's used as both a nutrient enhancer and a preservative alongside KNF input. When applied to plants foliarly, it helps them chelate minerals, helping them become more bioavailable. It helps in balancing microbes, and it stimulates helpful plant defense mechanisms that create stronger and more pest and disease resistant plants. Finally, the 9th KNF input is seawater, or just sea salt. Harvested ocean water is the best since it contains many live microbes and trace minerals, but a high quality sea salt will suffice for those of us who don't live near a salty body of water. As is the case for every single one of the KNF amendments, be careful how much seawater that you apply to your soil. It's never applied undiluted, and sometimes it's scaled back even further as the mineral balance in your soil is achieved. If you're interested in any particular one of these amendments, you can watch our videos on them and or download one of our PDFs that we've linked in the description. If you'd like to have access to all of them without having to download them all individually, just download one for starters, and we'll send you an email with access to the rest of them. Korean natural farming is a powerful and complicated approach to gardening. It can feel overwhelming at first when you're getting started, but as you start making and using the amendments, it quickly becomes apparent how useful they actually are and how they work in tandem to bring health to your garden. The most promising aspect of Korean natural farming is that after years of applying the amendments to your soil, balance is gradually restored, and your garden actually ends up needing less and less of the amendments until the microbes are abundant and efficient enough to be able to grow plants pretty much on their own without the need of any additional inputs. Similar to the idea of a food forest found in permaculture circles, we're creating closed-loop systems that are self-sustaining and abundant. So how do you know which path to pursue, KNF or permaculture? Well, as you may have sensed if you've made it this far in the video, KNF and permaculture complement each other quite well. Whereas permaculture focuses on sustainable and regenerative systems of design, Korean natural farming emphasizes the need for integrating robust microbes and fermented ingredients that aid in the actual growing of plants. If you are just starting out or starting a new garden venture from scratch, I might recommend that you delve a little bit deeper into permaculture practices first that can set up your garden layout well for the future. Using permaculture, you'll be able to plan out and optimize the design of your garden, utilizing edges, tree guilds, and composting techniques. If you have an established garden, or if the idea of playing the role of a scientist feels exciting to you, KNF has got a lot to offer. You might start by making one of the simpler garden amendments like FPJ, LAB, or water-soluble minerals first to gain some confidence. Experiment with these for a little while, spraying them on your plants at their recommended dilutions. And then once you feel confident with those, you might consider branching out into some of the more time-consuming recipes like OHN and FAA. Collecting and culturing IMO is one of the most intimidating aspects of KNF, so you might give it a try, fail to catch anything, and then give up for a while. My recommendation is to actually wait until you're ready to make that kind of your main thing, and then just pursue making it as your primary objective. It can take a long time to figure out, and we'll be coming out with a lot more tutorials and troubleshooting helps this season to hopefully make the process of catching IMO smoother for you. That said, taking IMO from stage 1 to 4 is an extremely rewarding experience that results in pretty astounding results in the garden. We started this garden just last year, and after applying IMO 4 and liquid IMO only a few times last season, we're finding biological bloom underneath the leaves in our garden beds, underneath the wood chips and the pathways, in the root systems of the weeds that we're pulling up. This stuff works its way through your garden fast, and it brings a lot to the table, so don't put off making it forever. Guys, I hope this video was informative as you consider ways that you might upgrade your gardening operation. If there are any topics that I covered in this video that you would like to hear more on, please let me know in the comments, and be sure to check out some of our free resources found in the description. If you want to get started with some DIY natural farming recipes, you can check out this playlist that we've made to get you started. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.